Hi guys, welcome back to the 20-something Confidential. My name is Macy, and today I'm just going to take you through my timeline for applying to PA school, PA being physician assistant. So for those of you who are planning to apply in 2020, I just wanted to give you some tips and tricks for being super prepared for the upcoming application round. I actually just applied in 2019 and was accepted, so I'll be starting this summer, which I'm really excited about. So I wanted to kind of give back to this process and help you all with your applications as well. So first and foremost, I finished my undergraduate degree at UVA. I majored in kinesiology. Right after I graduated, I took the GRE. I just wanted it out of the way. That was just a personal preference. I didn't want to be worrying about it when I was doing my applications, since that's already such a stressful time. So got the GRE done. I did have one outstanding prerequisite to take after graduation. That was biochemistry, and I took that while I was working. So I work as a medical assistant, which I have found to be extremely valuable, and I highly recommend you consider taking that gap year to get some clinical work done. First of all, when it comes to applying to PA school, I think one of the most important parts of your application, aside from the grades we already know, is your personal statement. That is something that I recommend starting to work on in January. So 4 months before the application cycle even opens up, start working on your personal statement, and so you can perfect it. I mean, it's something that goes to every single school that you're applying to, and you're gonna have multiple rough drafts, and you're gonna rewrite it, and you're gonna wanna brainstorm what conveys why you want to be a PA better than anything else in your life, whether it be a personal story, whether it be a clinical, something that led you to the profession, and why PA specifically over other professions. But I can do a separate video on how I wrote my personal statement. I just wanted to let you know that it is extremely important to start working on that early so that you can be proud of what you write and what you're submitting. So the 2019 cycle opened April 26th, and I remember that specifically because it was in my calendar like a year in advance. I think it always opens in April. Nicole just informed me it's April 25th of this year. So put it in your calendars because you're gonna want to get an early jump on submitting those applications. Submitting early is really important. So I submitted my first application in June, which was later than I wanted to. I was actually finishing up that biochemistry course, and I wanted to wait until all my final grades were in before I submitted anything, just to simplify the process for me, because I didn't want to have to send in like updated transcripts and things like that. I just wanted everything in my CASPA to be verified and ready to go with no outstanding prerequisites. It's different for everyone, and plenty of people apply with outstanding prerequisites. It's generally better to apply as early as possible. A lot of schools have rolling applications, and getting in your application earlier means that it will be reviewed earlier when they have more seats open for interviews, when they have more seats open in the class. So be aware of what schools do have those rolling admissions and get those applications in first. Schools all close their applications at different times, so you're gonna wanna be very aware of that as well. But it is listed in CASPA, so you have those dates really accessible to you, which is really nice, and that's why it's so nice to have a central application service. I'll put a little photo up of what CASPA looks like. CASPA stands for, I think, the Central Application Service for Physician Assistants, and it's just kind of like, if you remember applying to undergrad, the Common App, where you have all of your schools listed. You'll have like a central application that goes to every school you're applying to with additional like supplemental questions that each school puts on there individually. So that's just what CASPA is. You'll register for that when it opens. Some things you can do ahead of time to get organized though, so that we can submit our applications as early as possible. Ask for your letters of recommendation 2 to 3 months in advance, because a lot of graduate schools have application cycles that open at the same time, and you don't want the person that you're asking for a reference from to be bombarded with requests at the same time, especially professors. I think this is most important when we're talking about professors. Give them the time to really write you a good recommendation, and give them the resources to write you a good recommendation. You want to give them a good resume. You want to give them kind of a more detailed description of what you've been involved in at your undergraduate university, if this is coming from a professor. You want them to know all of the wonderful things you've done so that they can write about them, and they can write about your commitment to becoming a physician assistant. On that same note, just like I mentioned, have a great resume prepared. Some schools are going to ask for it, so you're going to need it for that purpose too, but also for giving it to the people you're asking for a recommendation from. My professor actually asked me for a little detailed like background story of me, as well as a detailed description of everything I was involved in, which kind of told me that she was hoping and planning to write me a good recommendation because she wanted that information available to her. So I think if you're asking for a recommendation, just go ahead and give them something like that so that they can actually make it the letter personalized to you, and so that the admissions committee that's reading it is like, wow, this person that's really recommending this applicant knew them, because you don't want it to sound like a generic, like, I don't know, professor recommendation, where it's like, was a great student, pleasure to have in class. So I'll move on. Next, you should request a physical copy of your transcript. This is something that you're going to have to manually enter into CASPA. Every class, every grade from any institution you have ever attended, not high school, but anything after high school, any community college, university, whatever, you have to enter it into CASPA. And then you're going to have to send your official transcripts to CASPA as well, and they're gonna get manually verified against what you've entered. So make sure that you're entering it correctly, make sure that you're being detail oriented and you're getting it right, because you don't want to make a silly mistake that delays the process of getting your CASPA verified. Research the schools that you're interested in applying to, and visit them if they're nearby. I think that having kind of a detailed spreadsheet of schools that you might be interested in can really help you when you're going to start your applications. Something to consider would be location, cost, length of program. Do they require the GRE? Are their admissions rolling? When is their admission deadline? So if they're rolling and they have an early deadline, then you need to get your application in as soon as possible, because they're gonna stop reviewing applications the earliest. Their classes are gonna fill up the earliest. So you can really prioritize where you're applying if you know all of this information and have it available to you beforehand. And then determine how much you're willing to spend on these applications. It is really expensive. I personally don't know anyone, including myself, who spent less than $1,000 on applications, and I would say everyone I know applied to like 7+ programs. At each school, it's $55 to submit your CASPA, and then schools can have up to $100 of supplemental application fees, as well as sending your GRE was like $27. So it adds up really fast, and you need to be financially prepared for the application cycle. And then in my personal preference, have the GRE already done if possible. I took it a year out of even applying, and I was just so glad to have it out of the way. I know everyone is different, everyone's on a different timeline, but I thought that was really useful. Next, I'm going to tell you 2 things to do as soon as CASPA opens that's really going to speed up the verification process of your CASPA application. And being verified on CASPA means that your letters of recommendation are in and your transcripts have been verified. So with regard to transcripts, have them requested to be sent to CASPA the day CASPA opens. Like, you just need to do this because the verification process can take so long, especially if you're waiting until like mid-cycle when all the other applicants are applying. Everyone's submitting their transcripts. People are manually verifying what you've inputted versus the transcripts that your institution sent them, and it can take a really long time. I had friends who had to wait an additional month to send in their applications because their CASPA wasn't verified, and they were solely just waiting on their transcripts to be verified. So highly recommend that the day CASPA opens, you submit your transcripts. Another thing you can do the day CASPA opens is look through all the schools available on CASPA. Every PA school program that goes through CASPA, which is like almost all of them that I know of except for the Mayo Clinic, they're all through CASPA. You can just click to add them. I'll show you if I'm able to. I don't know if I can still get into my CASPA, but I will try. You just click to add a school, and then you'll see all the school's deadlines, you'll see their supplemental questions. So that's really valuable to have that information, and it can help you with getting your spreadsheet done. So with regards to my timeline, I obviously applied in June. I was offered my first interview in July, late July, to a program with rolling admissions. Then I received 2 the next week, also to programs with rolling admissions. In September, I was interviewing at these programs. I had kind of like 3 back-to-back. But during that time that I was interviewing, I hadn't heard from any other schools for interviews. So I did have kind of a period of kind of radio silence where I wasn't hearing from other programs. And I was like, oh, well, I guess these are my 3. But I did ultimately in like late October, early November hear from 2 more programs that offered me an interview, but at that point I had already chosen where I was going and submitted my deposit and everything, so I actually turned down those interviews to Dr. You have to swipe in. Yeah? Tomorrow night. What was I even saying? So the general timeline is that you apply in spring. You can hear back anytime from summer to even as late as the next spring, which is kind of crazy, but I have heard of programs doing like, I don't know, like a second round of interviews in late spring. So it happens, but generally you'll hear by at least January or so. In fact, the programs that I was not accepted to, I've mostly heard from like late December, like this week. So yeah, I just wanted to let you all know what my timeline was. I wanted to offer these tips and tricks that I learned through my application process. I can say that it was stressful, but it was extremely rewarding. If this is something that you're passionate in, you will find a place somewhere. It is extremely common to apply more than one round, and I think the majority of applicants actually do. So keep working really hard and strengthening your application. You also have to remember that schools really emphasize different things when looking at applicants. Some schools are really big on grades and GRE. Some schools are really big on if a person has shown a commitment to service or a commitment to working in the healthcare industry or has a ton of clinical hours. Everyone has a different emphasis, and if you're not applying to programs that really align with what your strengths are on your application, then those programs might not accept you, but you can look into other programs. And if you have a ton of service hours, find programs that have an emphasis on service. If you have a ton of clinical hours, find programs that generally accept applicants with tons of clinical hours. You can find that on each program's website in their like admitted students statistics. So that's really, really a useful tool so that you're applying to places that want students like you. So thank you so much for watching. I hope that this was useful for you. I hope that you can take these tricks and tips and use them for the 2020 application cycle. If you have any more questions, please comment them below. You're also welcome to email us at 20somethingconfidential@gmail.com if you have any questions that are specific to your application. We'll get back to as many of you as we can. We've been really excited that so many people have already emailed us from that one video that we did, and there's a lot more coming. Thank you so much for watching. Good night. Good night. It's fine. Goodbye. It's nighttime here.